It's time to give credit to the skipper. Craig Counsell is having a really good year so far in 2025.
You are Locked On Cubs, your daily Chicago Cubs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Cubs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Sam Olbert. I'm a lifelong fan taking my passion into a discussion with you on all things Cubs. Thank you for being part of the show and making Locked On Cubs your first listen today. And the best way you can help us grow the show is to listen every day, like the video, and give us a comment down below. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. We got a great show for you whenever you're listening tonight or in the morning. We're going to talk about not a Kyle Tucker extension, but maybe a Jed Hoyer extension and why that could be important before the trade deadline, maybe. We're going to give Craig Counsell his flowers. I know, when things are going wrong, you blame the skipper. Well, when things are going right, you got to give him credit too. So we're going to do that. A little Kyle Tucker update, but we start in our nation's capital with another business-like, very solid, impressive performance. Just another game where the Cubs did what they needed to do. Last week, last homestand, they won games 2-1. They won games 3-2. They won games where there wasn't a lot of runs to be scored. But on Tuesday night, you knew that they were going to need to score runs. DC, the Nats, they got a scrappy lineup. They've been playing really well. Horton on the mound. You're facing Trevor Williams, with all due respect. That's the type of guy you should do damage against, and that's exactly what happened for the Cubs. It started out a little bit rocky. They were down 3-1 on a play that should have been ruled an error by Michael Busch. And you start saying to yourself, that could come back to haunt them. And, how are they going to respond? And then immediately right after that, in the fourth inning, PCA leads off with a double, steals third base. And, the floodgates happen from there. Another unbelievable base running play by PCA, having Jose Tena having to freeze and overly freeze. I mean, Tena should have got the out at third base. That really opened the floodgates there in the fourth. But the Cubs just did what the Cubs do. They did what they needed to do to win a baseball game. I want to highlight a few things from the game. Number one, and this probably isn't where you think I'm going to lead off, but I'm going to. You look at the box score from the ball game tonight, and it won't stand out. It won't pop out at you. But Nico Hoerner, okay, 1 for 4, 2-run single. Well, big deal, Sam. Well, it is a big deal, and I'm going to tell you why. His other 3 at-bats, I think he popped out all 3 times, were low leverage. I think most of them were nobody on base. I think one of them he might have had a guy on, but he wasn't in scoring position. Low leverage. Okay, I'm going to try and drive the baseball. He comes up, 5th inning, 5-3 game. Swanson just struck out with the bases loaded on a bad call. Bases loaded, 2 outs. He works a full count, and you could just see he was going to right field. He was going to drive the ball the other way, and he had the 2-run single, which I thought was the biggest hit of the game. It broke the game open. And when I tweet out, when I'm on Twitter and I go, that makes me emotional. I get emotional. Yeah, it's a bit, but it's a bit based off truth. And the bit is that this is Nico Hoerner. This is the guy that I've always envisioned him being. And this is why I fell in love with him as a player so early on, because, I'm an old school guy for the most part. It's not about OPS with Nico Hoerner. It's not about slugging with Nico Hoerner. He's never going to OPS 800. He's never going to slug 450. But what he's going to do is get big hits in big moments to either break games open or get you back in baseball games or win you baseball games. He's been as good as anybody in the game with runners in scoring position. And, he's hitting right around 300. And this is the exact guy that I envisioned going into this year if the Cubs were going to take that next step. That was his job. I don't really care about his stats. Hit for a high average. and hit when it matters. That's a skill. He had a down year with it last year. I'm sorry, Boog. It's a skill. It's not luck. Nico Horner's bat-to-ball skills plays when the game's on the line in big spots, and I just love it, and I want to shout it out again. Great job, Nico Horner. I will book your ticket for you, if necessary, for Atlanta. It was a massive day for Michael Busch. Home run, triple, single. Had that bad defensive play, more than made up for it. Michael Busch does two things. He gets hot in bunches, and he hits really well away from Wrigley Field. Would you believe it if I told you his OPS is near 900 now? Is it time to have that conversation with Busch? Should he be playing every day and getting a chance versus lefties? What would his OPS be if he was playing every day versus lefties? Maybe 830, 840, something like that. Maybe he's earned that right. Justin Turner's had some big hits this year for the Cubs, but he's still not hitting the ball consistently. Hit a couple balls hard tonight. I still have a lot more confidence in Turner in big spots versus a lefty than I do Busch, but I think it's time to have that conversation. I really, really do. Especially if Kyle Tucker's going to be out for a few games. You know, let's see what this young man could do. He's earned that opportunity. Big day for Michael Busch. Was nice to see Matt Shaw drive the ball with authority, 100-plus mile-an-hour line drives to right field. Last week, he got a couple hits, got a few hits here and there, but he wasn't driving the baseball like you want to see. He drove the ball today, which was big. And then Cade, man, this is Cade Horton. Welcome to the Cade Horton experience. It's a different experience than I thought it was going to be, but it's a fun experience. It's a steady experience. Just great mound presence, great makeup out there. Was a tough lineup. He had to face all lefties. So you knew he was going to feature the changeup a lot. He did that at a high level. He really should have only given up one earned run. It dumbfounds me. I'm dumbfounded how that was not an error on Michael Busch, with all due respect. I literally feel like that's one where I could have actually made that play. And I never say that on this show because, you know, I couldn't make a lot of these plays. But that one, I think that one was a pretty clear error. I'm impressed with Cade's makeup. I'm just impressed with his presence out there. You know, I thought it would be a little bit more, whoa, look at this guy's stuff. It's not as much that, but it's more like that guy kind of looks like a veteran out there. He looks like he's pitched a lot, even though he hasn't. And I don't think it's a coincidence. He's winning starts and the Cubs are winning his outings. He looks like a pro out there. And I'm really excited to see how he finishes this year and goes forward, because he's been a joy to watch thus far. Really, really easy on the eye to watch. So great win for the Cubs. They're 38-22. Tough assignment on Wednesday night going up against Mackenzie Gore, but the Cubs got a really good pitcher going in their own right with Matthew Boyd, and obviously it'll be a much different Nationals lineup. They'll have a lot more righties featured. Before the game, Craig Counsell gave a Kyle Tucker update. It was kind of an update, but a non-update. They don't expect them to play tomorrow on Tuesday night, which makes sense. We'll see. It's day-to-day, but they also don't expect an IL stint with Tucker, so that was really good news. So we'll see what happens with that. And, you know, speaking of Craig Counsell, I think it's time to give him his flowers. I really do. I think he's done a lot of good things this year, and I need to praise him more. If I'm going to get on him when things don't go right, if I'm going to get on David Ross when things don't go right, you got to give these guys credit when it does, and I'm going to do that coming up next. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. I don't ever cook. When I do, I'm not good at it. So a lot of my money goes into ordering out, online food delivery services. It wasn't until I started using Monarch when I realized how bad it was. And Monarch helped me budget smarter and save more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you could use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. We are back here on Locked On Cubs, and I said it just now. Managers have tough jobs, right? Because when things go well, it's the players that are doing it. And when things go poorly, it's the manager's fault. And this show is an example of that. It's just kind of how the business works. I think guys like Craig Counsell know what they're getting into. And I just think it's really lazy and easy to say, well, it's an easy team to manage when Pete Crow-Armstrong's an MVP candidate and you add Kyle Tucker. I mean, I don't see what Counsell's doing. And I just don't feel that way. And I want to give my partner a lot of credit, Matt Cozy, because he said before the 2024 season, and I don't know if you guys have noticed, and Matt's going to probably not like me for this because Matt has much more of a personality, but Matt and Craig Counsell it feels like they have similar approaches, just real, pretty even keel guys, meticulous. They prepare a lot. You know what I mean? And Matt said before the season, not this season, but the 2024 season, he said, don't be surprised if Counsell is as impactful as you think he's going to be, because he might just take notes year one. He might just observe and see different things about this organization and what they need to do. And I was just like, what are you talking about? He's getting paid $8 million. You don't just mail it in year one. And Matt wasn't saying that he would mail it in, but it really does seem like last year was an observation period for Craig Counsell, learning about the organization, learning the strengths, learning the weaknesses. And it does seem like he just has more of a pulse on this team, more impact on this team. His press conferences before and after games are different. And I just think he's more comfortable. And maybe it just took a year, because I will say, I said it many times, I thought year one was very underwhelming for what I thought we were getting. And year two has been different. And it's not just different because of the result. It's different because of his approach to each game. I mean, you could just tell before spring training, there was a different level of urgency, a different sense of urgency. And I think it's just playing out on the field. And I think he deserves a lot of credit for that. Some examples that I could give you. Well, Pete Crow-Armstrong, this guy is not a guy that's particularly easy to manage. He's very easy to change. A lot of managers would be like, hey, you know what? We got to keep Pete in the 8-hole. Pete swings too much. We got to keep him in the 9-hole. And from the beginning, Craig Counsell has allowed Pete to be Pete. And we've talked about how important that is. We talked about, Matt and I talked about that on the show so many times. Matt's like, well, he needs to take more pitches, and coincidentally he is right now, but just let this young man be. Let him be there. There's a superstar in there. Let him do what he needs to do. And Craig Counsell's done that. And I think one of David Ross's flaws with this franchise was not being able to develop young players and not getting the most out of them. And you look at Matt Shaw now, going back down, coming back up. Pete Crow-Armstrong. I mentioned on the show the other day what he's done with Daniel Palencia, just giving him the keys to that closer role and saying, hey, I want this to be your job. Yeah, you blew the game. Well, he wouldn't say that, but you lost the game, lost the save in Miami. That's fine. That was fluky. Go out there 2 days later, do it again, and then you're going to do it again and again and again. That's great managing, right? I understand the Cubs offense has been great. This isn't an easy thing to manage with no Steele and no Imanaga for this long. He's pieced together the rotation. He was the guy that had the opener on Saturday for Ben Brown. He was the guy even in Tuesday night's game. Cade didn't have a lot of pitches going, but it's like, you know what? They got so many lefties in there. It's time. Let's get Thielbar in there. Let's get Cabrera in there. And I bet you, I could be wrong, but I bet you having all these lefties, Pomerantz, Thielbar, Cabrera, I bet you that's a Counsell thing, because not until this year have we ever seen the Cubs really have this many lefty options. He has that. And, the Cubs are 60 games in now. They're 38-22. I could recall maybe one game. I don't even remember the specifics. I just remember being in this very chair saying, I think Counsell deserves a little blame for that. I think one game in 60, we've come on the show and gone, all right, that was probably a mistake from Counsell. Everything's made sense. The times where I've been like, hey, this is really weird. Why are we doing this? There's always been an injury explanation. And even when I was really on him the night when Palencia got the closing opportunity in Miami. And then we found out, well, that was because Hodge was hurt. But it turned out, that was going to be his job. He wasn't going to win it over Hodge, but that's what Counsell wanted. And it worked out. And so I just think so far, Counsell's been really good. Even with the batting order, he's been really consistent. When guys have struggled, Dansby goes down to 8. You start hitting, you go back up. I expect Carson Kelly to get moved down pretty soon. He's just made all the right moves. He's pushed the right buttons so far. And the biggest thing for me, and I'll repeat it because I think it's worth repeating, is just the tone, man. It's just a different tone. Last year's tone felt like kind of just going through the motions here. I don't have high expectations for this group. And I'm not saying he threw the year or anything like that. I'm not saying that he didn't want to make the playoffs. But you could just tell this year was, hey, okay, now we go. Now we go. And I know Matt and I both talked about that before the season, even in spring training, just the press conferences, the interviews. And it starts with that because last year just kind of felt like a fog all year. Same comments, same thing. And this year it's felt a little bit different. And I appreciate that he doesn't get overly excited after wins. And he just seems locked in. And the coaching staff, I mean, the other big element is the base running. I think that's a big Counsell thing. He talked about it the other day. I can't remember where I heard it. I think it was on ESPN 1000 with Jesse Rogers. I could be wrong, but he talked about it the other day where he was like, Counsell actually spent more time on base running this year than he did when he was with Milwaukee and paid more attention to it. And you could just see it. I mean, the Cubs are how much better if the Cubs ran the bases, and those were probably his hires at first and third base. Quentin Berry's done an outstanding job over there. How many times have we said Quentin Berry's name this year? Not a lot because he's not having a lot of bad sense, right? It's just been a very professional approach. He's handled things really well. He's handled the injuries really well. And, like I said, I just think, the next time he makes a mistake, we're going to probably talk about it on this show. And so I think it's just fair to shout him out and give him credit because I don't think the Cubs would be 38-22 with a lot of managers right now. I don't. There's a few. I'm not saying he's far and away the best, but this has been a tough situation to manage, this combination between youth and veterans and, Tucker. I mean, they didn't even have Kyle Tucker on Tuesday night. And, I mean, we're going to miss Kyle Tucker. We're going to need him, but, all the guys were in the right spots. The lineup was there. He even took responsibility before the season for Seiya and said he needed to do a better job with Seiya. There was a communication issue there. And now Seiya's having a really good year. It's just been an A effort so far from Craig Counsell. And I wanted to be one of the first people to say that. I know it's easy to do when you've won 38 out of 60 games. And I know a lot of people are going to say, well, you'll be the first one that jumps on them if they have an 8 out of 9 game losing streak. Probably so. But baseball's a long season. And I think sometimes you got to credit guys when they're doing a really good job. And Craig Counsell, after what I thought was an underwhelming 2024, has been exactly what we thought we were getting in 2025. Craig Counsell's boss is a guy by the name of Jed Hoyer. And I don't know if you remember this, but Jed Hoyer is not under contract past 2025. Coming up next, we're going to talk about a contract extension. Should the Cubs do it? Should they not? Is it beneficial? Let's talk about it all next. This episode is brought to you by Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades. Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast. I said fast. 2 more steals for Pete Crow-Armstrong. He's tied for the league lead from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now, It's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. We are back here on Locked On Cubs. That same interview I was talking about with Jesse Rogers on 1000, I think it was with Waddle and Sylvie. They talked a little bit about a potential Jed Hoyer extension, and then Bleacher Nation wrote about it on Tuesday. I apologize if my voice is still a little hoarse. I'm on the tail end of this sinus thing. It's almost done. It's an interesting conversation, right? We've talked about Kyle Tucker and his extension. We've talked about Pete Crow-Armstrong and a possible extension for Pete that probably now won't happen because he's doing so well. What about Jed Hoyer? This is an interesting topic. So on ESPN 1000, Jesse Rogers was talking about, well, it might be important for the Cubs to wrap up Jed, and it could help them wrap up Kyle Tucker because Kyle Tucker, doesn't want to re-sign with a lame duck baseball president. I don't buy that at all. 0%. I don't think Kyle Tucker cares who the baseball president is. I think he just wants to be paid market value. I think I'm not speaking. I have no inside info at all. I really don't think Kyle Tucker would go, all right, we're pen to paper here. You know what? I don't feel comfortable with this. I want to make sure Jed's taken care of before I am. If he is, he's one of the greatest guys of all time. Not saying he isn't, but I really don't think that impacts it. Where it gets interesting is the trade deadline, because you are going to be in a position this year, if you're the Chicago Cubs, where you are going to buy, and I'm not talking about in sync, a lot of players, okay? Wish Matt was here to play the laugh track, because when I say it myself, I just sound so corny. Do you want to have a baseball president making those decisions, selling off some of your best assets, whether that be Owen Casey, whether that be James Triantos, whether that be Moises Ballesteros, knowing that he's not going to be there and he's really just focused on 2025? Or would it be smarter to go, okay, let's just make sure we take care of Jed before the trade deadline, so Jed has not only our current best interest at heart, but our long-term as well? And I got to tell you, my response to that is, I don't think it matters a whole lot either. I don't think Jed Hoyer is that type of guy. He's been with the Cubs for a really long time. And I think with social media, everyone knows in this business, even if you make a bad move and then you go to a different team, you're still going to get blamed for that bad move when you're on a different team. So I just think, I think with that, I don't feel like it's a big deal to do it for Kyle Tucker. I don't think it's a big deal to do it because you don't want him making a ton of, win now moves. Heck, if that's what it takes, fine. Let's go all in for 2025. We'll figure it out later. I think the case to extend Jed Hoyer is if you think he's done a really good job and you want to reward him for that. That's the case to do it. Jed's made a lot of mistakes. There's no question about it. Mostly on the margins, I think. And I think the Dansby contracts aged pretty well. I mean, this is kind of what you get for a Gold Glove shortstop that has a little bit of pop in his bats. And J-Mo looked like that might be a bad deal. That's worked out pretty well. Tucker obviously feels like a great deal. Pete Crow-Armstrong feels like maybe one of the biggest and most important trades could be in team history. So, when you look back at all that, that's why you do the extension. Cubs are really good. You want to reward him for that. I could see the case of doing it. Sam, why wouldn't you just do it? The incentive to do it now instead of after the season would just be because of the trade deadline. You don't want him being clumsy with, instead of spending maybe 110 cents on the dollar for win now players, he's spending 150 because he knows he's not going to be here. And then the other side of it is, does Jed want more say? Does Jed want a bigger budget? Does Jed want more say in, business things? Because as part of a team president, that's the next step. It's not just, you're not just involved in baseball activities. You're involved in business and budget and things like that. So I think it's interesting. I mean, I think the Cubs, I've said this before, I think the Cubs are like one of the most, if not the most interesting team in baseball over the next month. Number one, Kyle Tucker and that extension, because if it doesn't happen before the All-Star break, it ain't going to happen. Number two, all the moves that they could potentially make. Not many teams have a really good farm system and are playing unbelievable baseball at the major league level. They're going to go for it. So that's going to be fun to watch. And then number three is, they're having a great season, and they have a baseball president whose contract is up at the end of the year. And I'm fascinated to see what happens. My guess is, if I had to guess, if the Cubs play another couple of weeks of baseball like this, I think it's going to get announced. I think it's going to get done. I really do. Just because I think it's just good PR. You take care of your guy. Maybe they have a handshake deal at the end of the year. I don't know. But I think if Jed Hoyer wants to stay here, I mean, you got to remember, Jed's been here now, what is it, 13 years? He's been here a long time. What would that deal look like? Maybe 5 more? I think, and I think if you're Tom Ricketts, and Jesse Rogers talked about this. I actually thought he did a really good job with it. I think Jed's communication was poor during the rebuild when he traded Rizzo and Bryant and those guys. He should have just said what it was, and I think it would have been taken better. I think he was instructed probably not to by Ricketts. This is obviously pure speculation. But when you look back at it, they trade the core second half of 2021. That was a really difficult thing to do and a non-popular thing to do. They were bad in 22. They should have made the playoffs in 2023. They were a playoff caliber team everywhere but their record by a game. They should have been a playoff team. They took a step back in 2024. I thought Jed did a poor job offensively that year. Just relying on Bellinger to be good again just didn't feel like the right thing to do. And now in 2025, as we sit here over a third of the way through the season, they're one of the best teams in baseball. I mean, he's done a pretty decent job. And so, hired Craig Counsell, all that stuff. I would assume that Tom Ricketts is pretty happy with that. I think Tom Ricketts is pretty happy that the Cubs have currently a better record than the Los Angeles Dodgers. And, they're not having to spend any money. I mean, I don't think there's anything that appeals more to Tom Ricketts to having a really good team and being not even top 10 in payroll. That's a different conversation for a different day. But this conversation is about a Jed Hoyer extension. And, he's probably deserving of it. And I'm curious to see when that happens. Another great night, another great show. We'll see what happens on Wednesday. That'll be a really challenging game. If the Cubs can win that, it'll be a very, very fun episode. Thank you so much for checking out this edition of Locked On Cubs. You give us 30 minutes. We'll give you all things Cubs with a laugh or two along the way. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, smash the like button for the algorithm, and leave a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, and everywhere you get your podcasts. I'm Sam Olber, and this is another winning edition of Locked On Cubs. Have a wonderful day, everybody.